right, guys, we are now at part 2 of first-time home buyers class. This one is renting versus owning. So just kind of understanding benefits and advantages, disadvantages of each. Ian has got a ton of experience, so I'm going to let him kind of lead most of this section. You go with that?
I'm good with it.
All right.
So when you go through the advantages and disadvantages of renting versus owning, obviously we could talk about this all day long like we can most of the categories we're speaking on. But I've kind of lowered it to 3 advantages and disadvantages of renting and 3 advantages and disadvantages of owning a home. So we're going to wrap through those fairly quickly for you here today. And we're going to start with renting. So with the advantages...
Are you really going to wrap it? Or are you just going to talk about it?
Because I'll hit it.
So the probably just talk about it for our guys.
So the advantages of renting, number one for me is repairs aren't your responsibility. You as the tenant are not responsible for making repairs to the home. So if your HVAC goes out, your water heater stops working, stove stops working, you just call your landlord and they take care of that for you. So you don't have any out-of-pocket expenses as far as repairs are concerned. And again, if you're on month-to-month budget or anything like that, it's really easy to average just your rent. You don't have any of the expenses on top of that. So renting a home can be very advantageous in that way. Number 2, flexibility. Renting gives you an easier option to move place to place, especially in the event that you won't be in an area for more than 2 years. So in order to avoid property gains tax, you have to remain in a property and use it as your primary residence for 2 calendar years. So with that, if you are going to be new to an area, obviously if you want to buy, always a great time to do it right now, especially at the way that equity is increasing, especially in our area. But if you're going to be in a place, let's say you're new to an area and you're going to be there for 6 months and you don't know where your job's going to take you after, obviously you don't want to buy a house for 6 months. So you're probably going to want to rent in that time frame. So being new to an area, another great reason to rent. So you can kind of learn, do I like this neighborhood? Do I want to be in this neighborhood? Would I rather be on the north side of town, the east side of town? Whatever way you want to look at that, that's a good place to start. Number 3, renting does not require a large down payment. So you can pretty much get into a rental agreement for the cost of 1 month's rent and a security deposit. So on average, you're looking at $1,700 rent. That's $1,700 deposit, $1,700 first month rent. And a lot of times that first month rent will be prorated by the day for which that first month is. So if you move in the 15th, you're going to pay 15th to the end of the month on that. So outside of that, there really is no more upfront payment cost. So there is no down payment to get into the house. There is no 20%, 5%, 3% down, 3.5%. So you can really get in with a minimal cost and have somewhere to live for you and your family.
I think another kind of advantage, as we're talking about first-time home buyers also, right? One of the things he hit on is if you're new to the area, you don't know where you want to go to church. You don't know where the hospitals are, the good neighborhoods, the okay neighborhoods, the daycares, all of that stuff. It would give you an opportunity to at least learn the area, especially if it's new, even if it's 6 months for a year, and you're not sure how long you're staying, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Another pro too of having a realtor that's a professional in your area specific. That way they can drive you around and kind of show you all the areas that they encompass under their belt. So now we'll jump over to the disadvantages of renting a home. Number 1, it can be difficult to alter or change a property. So when you rent, you are at the landlord's discretion on any home improvements or alterations. So you can't really do painting, you can't do add-ons, remodels, putting up fences, potentially even having pets. All of those things have to be run through the landlord before you do anything. And I'm going to tell you from being in that game for a long time, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to let you do anything. They want the property to stay.
It's hard to make it your own.
Correct. Yeah, it's pretty much going to be someone else's house that you're going to borrow for a time at a large payment. Landlords also set their own parameters on pets, so you may not be able to have a pet. So if you've got a family dog, I've had instances where people had to get rid of dogs. Or cats. Lots of them have a 50-pound and under to get rid of aggressive breeds. So keep that in mind as you go to rent. You're also at the mercy of the landlord on turnaround time on repairs being completed. So as far as if you call them and your fridge is not working, they legally have 14 days written notice to respond to that claim. So not always the best turnaround time. Your good landlords are going to turn around time normally within 24 hours. So keep that in mind too if you are dealing with a bad one. Number two, you don't own the property, so there's no security and stability in having a place of your own. So a landlord can give a notice at the end of your lease for you to vacate the property, just like you can give notice that you want to stay or that you want to leave at the end of a lease. Also, a lot of leases have built in a sale of home clause where if you are under lease and the owner decides they want to sell the property, you can have a 30-day notice no matter what that lease agreement says that, hey, you got to be out in 30 days. So that's another very important one to keep in mind. You're not going to have that on your apartments, obviously, or your condos, but when you are renting from somebody who has single family homes, look for that in your lease agreement. Number three, you aren't building any value. You are paying someone else's mortgage or their investment properties, mortgage down to a zero balance, potentially. My kind of running thing, especially with my tenants, is right now interest rates are hovering around the 7 mark, a little bit under that. But when you rent, you're paying 100% interest on every payment. So 100% of that goes somewhere else to someone else, and you're never going to see a penny of that money back. So you are truly just paying off another person's investment, where as a homeowner, you're paying that down for yourself and building equity in an asset.
We talk about net worth, right? I think I saw a chart not too long ago that showed the average net worth of a homeowner was $380,000, and the average net worth of a renter was like $6,000. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it was pretty interesting to me. And I know most renters are younger, trying to learn the advantages we just talked about, newer into the real estate game, but real estate's a great way to help build that net worth.
Yeah, and another thing is you're not always going to be able to own a home. So again, reach out to your real estate professional and get connected with a lender and see if you can turn that dream into a reality. And the good ones will always be able to work with you to try to get you to that place. So next, we're going to go into the advantages and disadvantages of owning a home. I can definitely think of a lot more advantages than disadvantages, but once again, we're going to name 3 to keep the time. So advantages of owning a home. Number 1, great long-term investment. You are building equity with every payment. And to piggyback off what Eddie
should have
just said,
saved my comment.
Yeah, piggyback off what Eddie just said, homeowners have 40 times higher net worth than renters. And that is not a typo, 40 times higher net worth than renters. Because you're truly building asset. I sent out CMAs yesterday to 3 different clients. All 3 have gained equity in their homes 20,000 or greater over the last calendar year. So you talk about 1 year. So you talk about, and that's not happening everywhere in the nation. We're very insulated here, but you talk about building wealth. What greater way to do it than an investment that's truly going to outpace inflation year over year? Obviously, there have been bad years, but historically speaking, from the start of time that we track this data, 2 times it's come down.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've got another interesting stat for you that I saw. One of our local economists here did actually, I take that back. I think it was Lawrence Young, who's the chief economist for the NAR, for National Association of Realtors. I probably can't use initials. He did some stats for us not that long ago that he took the 30 major cities around the United States, and I think he picked out 6 or 7 suburbs of all of these cities. And the stat that he gave was, as long as if you've bought in any of these 6 surrounding communities outside of the 30 major cities, and you've held it for 6 years, there is no time in our history that you've lost money. So all you have to do is hold real estate for 6 years inside these areas, and you've appreciated or gained net worth. I thought that was really interesting.
Yep, and that plays perfectly with the first one, a good long-term investment. Real estate's not, I'm going to buy this year, sell next year, buy this year, sell next year. You're going to get hit, 1, with lots of tax money paid out on any gains you do have, and 2, it builds wealth over time. Again, long-term investment. 2, federal tax benefits. You get to write off a lot on your home, and the biggest one is all of that interest you're paying, because I don't know if you've ever looked at the payment schedule on a house. It'll make you cry a little bit on the first few years. You're paying a lot of that money in interest. But again, still building equity the whole time, even if it's through equity in the home. Stability in your monthly payments is number 3. Your utility payments, taxes, insurance, obviously can fluctuate, but your loan more likely to be a 15 or 30-year loan. So people always get their they're like, well, you told me it would be the same payment for 30 years. Well, there's other things lumped into your payment. So taxes can change. We know that. And your insurance premiums can fluctuate.
So your loan payment will never change.
Principal and interest payment will never
That's
change.
right. The only thing that changes is the stuff that protects you.
Correct. Your taxes, insurance can fluctuate. And obviously, your utility payments can fluctuate, but you're paying those as tenants as well for the most part. But for the life of the loan, principal and interest payment, exact same. That's what you sign up for when you sign your papers. So now let's kick over to the disadvantages of owning a home. One, higher upfront costs. Obviously, you do have to come to the closing table with at minimum, your down payment. I've seen conventional loans at 1%. We have USDA loans at 0%, FHA 3.5%. Conventional can go anywhere from 1 to 99% down on a home. Obviously, out-of-pocket costs there can be different, but you do have closing costs. It does cost money to buy a house outside of your down payment. Lending fees, title fees, realtor fees, all of that outside of there. So that's something to think about. Number two, less mobility. Obviously, when you do own a home, much harder to just pick up and move. But if you do lean on your real estate professional, they can probably find you a great property manager that can manage that for you and keep it as a rental. But if you have to pick up and immediately sell, obviously there is a 2-year window for property gains tax. So if you pick up and move within the first year, 2 years, you are going to have to pay that property gains. That does not mean you pay taxes on the full amount you sell it for. It's the gain. So whatever over. So if you buy it for $200, sell it for $300, you're paying taxes on $100,000 in your tax bracket.
After you write off all the costs.
Yeah. Make sure you keep your receipts, folks.
That's right.
So you can write off all those costs. But down to number three, maintenance costs. You obviously, when you are a homeowner, are responsible for all the maintenance costs. So if that roof goes out, that HVAC goes out in the middle of summer, sink is leaking, that's on you now. And you have a legal obligation to make sure the property stays within its original condition if you have a loan on the house. So those maintenance costs do fall back to you, and you are responsible for those from here on out.
Great job, Ian. That was a lot. That is the end of part 2, our 3rd episode. We will have done shortly.